jurisdiction of Radharani. So it's by her mercy we can engage in Krishna's service. So, okay. We have Bhagavat Asraya Prabhu. Is Alankar Prabhu on the call?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Okay, so we can all turn on our videos.
Pretty much light in the back, I think.
I can turn the shades off.
You want to give an introduction of Bhagavat Asraya Prabhu?
You want to give? Well, a short intro I can give is Bhagavat Asraya Prabhu is Srila Prabhupada's disciple and is visiting from all the way from Australia and Sydney, Australia. And we met him in Athens. He is visiting United States for few things. One of the main things was Janvi Harrison's and her brother's wedding. And the second important thing was to serve Srimad Bhagavatam in Columbus. So yeah, we are very grateful and honored to have Bhagavat Asraya Prabhu with us. So yeah, please turn on your videos, make it more personal. And this is the, it took some convincing to to get this class going. So
What do you do? Chant Om Namo Bhagavate and then start? Okay. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. We chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Text number 19. Panchadasham Vamanakam Kutvagad Advaram Balahe Padatrayam Yachamana Pratyadishtush Tripishtapam. In the 15th incarnation, the Lord assumed the form of a dwarf Brahmana. Vaman.
Sorry, Alankar Prabhu, we were discussing 1.3, right? Which was
1:3:19, right?
Sorry, 1.13.19.
Oh, 1:13:19.
Missed one.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Dhrtarastra quits home. Text number 19. That's a good verse. Pratikriya na yasyeha kutaschit kahichit prabhu. Sa isha bhagavan kala savisham na samagataha. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time, Kala, that has approached us all. Yes, this frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time, Kala, who has approached us all. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There is no superior power which can check the cruel hands of death. No one wants to die. However acute the source of bodily sufferings may be. No one wants to die, however acute the source of bodily sufferings may be. Even in the days of so-called scientific advancement of knowledge, there is no remedial measure either for old age or for death. Old age is the notice of the arrival of death, served by cruel time, and no one can refuse to accept either summon cause or the supreme judgment of eternal time. This is explained before Dhrtarastra because he might ask Vidura to find out some remedial measure for the imminent fearful situation, as he had ordered many times before. Before ordering, however, Vidura informed Dhrtarastra that there was no remedial measure by anyone or from any source in this material world. And because there is no such thing in the material world, death is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Confirmed. Somebody sneezed, that's confirmed. Prabhupada used to say that. If somebody says something and simultaneously somebody sneezes, that's a fact.
Wow.
Or in India, when the little tick-tick lizard goes, yes? Somebody says something and you hit, then, oh, that's true. That's true. And because there is no such thing in the material world, death is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as it is said by the Lord himself in chapter 10, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse number 34. Death cannot be checked by anyone or from any source within this material world. Hiranyakashipu wanted to be immortal and underwent a severe type of penance by which the whole universe trembled. And Brahma himself approached him to dissuade Hiranyakashipu from such a severe type of penance. Hiranyakashipu asked Brahma to award him the blessings of immortality. But Brahma said that he himself was subject to death, even in the topmost planet. So how could he award him the benediction of immortality? So there is death, even in the topmost planet of this universe. And what to speak of other planets, which are far, far inferior in quality to Brahmaloka, the residing planet of Brahma. Wherever there is the influence of eternal time, there is this set of tribulations, namely birth, disease, old age, and death. And all of them are invincible. Om Agyanati Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripasindo Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschachadeshatarane Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Jatkripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinatarana. So Srila Prabhupada used to say, if you chant this Mangala Charan before you do anything, it will turn out successfully. So there's a rule of thumb for us. Actually, Mother Jamuna, she used to chant that every time just before she would go in the kitchen to cook. So yes. So let's hope this turns out all right. Death, as sure as death. What do they say? Death and taxes. As sure as death. There is nothing more sure in this world than the fact that we are all going to die. Or rather, death is going to come to us and take away everything we have, including this body. Ekachakra Pran Prabhu is here. He's probably heard me say this so many times in the last month, that we're just passing through. Actually, I always, whenever I go anywhere, especially in a situation like this where I don't know anyone, and in situations like this where I can barely see anyone, DS and TA and MK and RS and SD and SR and VG, JP and NP, I can't see. But the situation for us all in this material world, whether we are Lord Brahma or, as Prabhupada says, the insignificant ant, we are just passing through. Brahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravati Juna Mamu Pechitu Kuntaya Puna Janmana Vijite. We go to Bhagavat Gita. This verse is very powerful, from the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, from the highest planet to the lowest planet, all are places of misery in which repeated birth and death are taking place. This misery, thank you. This misery is predicated on the temporary nature of this material world, because nobody wants life to end. Nobody wants whatever situation they're in, even if it's a very difficult situation. Thank you. Even if it's a very difficult situation, as the second sentence of this purport says, no one wants to die, however acute the source of bodily sufferings may be. No one really wants to die. It's considered to be very abnormal if you want to die. So the temporary nature of material existence is actually the source of all our misery. All the miseries that we undergo in the material world are predicated on the fact that everything is temporary. Nothing lasts here. Childhood doesn't last, youth doesn't last, middle age doesn't last, and even old age doesn't last. I mean, the good news is, for one who has knowledge, that I'm not this body. This is such an important piece of information. The first piece of information that Arjuna gets from Krishna is that, first of all, never was there a time when you or I did not exist, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. And then as we are passing in this body from childhood to youth to old age, we pass into another body at death. Then the self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Bewilderment is a very powerful thing, bewildered by the influence, first of all, of false ego. In the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a very powerful verse which says, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai kamani savasha ahankara vimudatma kataham iti manyate. That the bewildered living entity, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are actually carried out by nature. And the word there is ahankara vimudatma. Ahankara means false ego. Vimuda means bewildered. V means emphasis, extreme emphasis. Vimudha. We become a mudha, a fool, bewildered fool, but it's vimudha. We're very completely bewildered by the influence of the false ego, by the covering of false ego, and then manipulated by the three modes of material nature in this material world. So this bewilderment is a very dangerous thing for the living entity, because in our bewildered state, we have become attracted to material things, attracted and therefore involved with. You become attracted to somebody, you want to get involved with them. Once you get involved with them, you become attached to them. And then, under the influence of time, everything is broken. Everything is broken. Or rather, as Narad Muni in the sixth canto of the Bhagavatam gives the riddle to the Hayavashyas. And one of the parts of the riddle is, what is the blade that turns and cuts things randomly? What is that? And they correctly answer that it is time. Time controls everything in this material world. The bewildered living entity thinks he's got all the time, as they say, all the time in the world. But we don't. We have a certain amount of time designated to us within a particular life. And when that time is up, everything is finished, cut immediately. And you can't make a deal. You can't make a deal. Death comes and says, now get out. And you say, well, wait a minute, let's talk about this. No talking about it, no, nothing, out. That moment comes in every lifetime. And the only possibility of getting out of any of this is, as this verse says, 15 and 16 in the 8th chapter go together as 14 and 15. What am I saying? No, 8th chapter. Sorry, I'm a little nervous here. 15 and 16, yes. Mamu pecha punajanma dukkhalayam shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana sangsiddhim paramangata abrahma bhuvana loka punaravati juta mamu pecha tukunteya punajanma navijate. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So the repeated phrase here is mam upecha. Mam upecha. Achieving me, he says. Prabhupada in the verse 15 it gives the transliteration for upecha as achieving, and in 16 arriving. Achieving, arriving, and in the translation the word attains is used. Achieving, arriving, attaining my abode, me, coming actually under my protection, under my shelter. The only shelter, the only protection in this world, in any situation, but ultimately in the situation of the moment of death, is Krishna. We must become convinced of this by becoming convinced about who Krishna is. It's very interesting in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. For sight unseen, you pick up Bhagavad Gita and read it, you don't know who Krishna is. He's just this person with Arjuna on this chariot. We start with blind Dhrtarastra hearing from Sanjaya by some process which on the surface of it seems fantastical, but by some ability he's what they call it distance viewing. This is something that's being experimented with a lot, actually, in paranormal psychology circles, and even by the American military. Distance viewing. To be able to sit in one place and know what's going on somewhere else. So Sanjaya has this ability. Dhrtarastra is totally blind in so many ways, not just physically. He's totally blind due to his attachment. That's a long story we could get into. It's amazing how when you're talking about things and something comes up and there's a story about that, and you can go off into it. But the point is, we don't know who Krishna is when we start reading Bhagavad Gita. He's just Arjuna's friend. Arjuna accepts him as some kind of authority that we're not aware of. But as the Bhagavad Gita unfolds, as Krishna speaks more and more, and we go deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding the nature of existence itself, we come to an understanding that this is God. God is, as I've said many times in many places, God is the position, just like President of the United States is the position, but who is the President of the United States? Of course, we see that's a rotating situation. But in the case of the absolute truth, in the case of the Supreme Personality, there is only one. The Supreme Personality occupies the position of God. The word God literally means to who we offer respect. And so we see there's so many gods. People are in all kinds of God and godlike positions, basically in regard to control, power and control. But there's only one Supreme Personality. There's only one person who is, as Lord Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Finished. There is only one Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller and owner of everything. The thing that we have forgotten is that actually we belong to him. That word belonging is something we hear it used in love songs a lot. People who are in love, they think about, you belong to me and I belong to you. We belong together forever and forever. There's a famous soap opera in Australia called Neighbours. You and me forever. You and me belong together forever and forever. The theme song has that line. And that is the deepest desire of the heart, to be in a situation of eternal love and happiness, in eternal, ever increasing, unending love and happiness. That's the deepest desire of the heart of everyone. But because this is a temporary place, and because we've been entangled in this temporaneous situation for a very long time, it's very easy to compromise with that and push that idea aside and just make the best of what you've got while it lasts. But the reality is we all have an eternal relationship with Krishna. That eternal relationship is temporarily interrupted by us. But it's never interrupted for Krishna. We have forgotten Krishna, but Krishna hasn't forgotten us. That's why Srimad Bhagavatam exists. That's why Bhagavad Gita exists in this world. That's why all of the avatars of the Lord appear. And most specifically in this age, Lord Chaitanya has appeared. Actually, Lord Chaitanya comes as a Chana avatar. Chana meaning hidden. But he's not even an avatar. He's the avatari. He is the source of all avatars. He's Krishna himself. But he's come in the mood of a devotee to do what no other incarnation ever does, and that's to spread this love. Spread love for Krishna indiscriminately everywhere in the world. There's an old song from when I was a young boy called What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. That's the only thing that there's just too little of. So everybody's reaching out for love. But the tragic nature of this situation is wherever we reach in material terms, we always lose. We always lose. Even you may be in a loving relationship with another person for your whole life, but then you die, or that other person dies. And we can speculate and hope that, oh, we'll be together forever and ever somewhere else, or in the next life, or we're soulmates, as all these ideas go around, but you have no guarantee of any of that. And when you're gone, you're gone. Prabhupada uses that phrase nicely in the Krishna book when Lord Balaram kills Rukmi. And he said he was dead and gone. Dead and gone. And we don't know where. We don't know where in this material world. But we actually belong to Krishna. We actually belong to and belong with Krishna. And the only hope of happiness, the lasting, everlasting happiness that we hanker for, is to somehow or another get back into our relationship with Krishna. This is the wonderful, wonderful thing about the Hare Krishna movement. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been established to facilitate this re-establishment of our lost relationship with Krishna. So it is beholding actually upon us all to become very serious about this, about getting back, what was it? Achieving, attaining, and arriving. All of those meanings come out of upecha. To achieve something, to attain something, and to arrive at something. Achievement in this world is about objects, external things. But the achievement that we are seeking is the achievement of attainment. Attainment means the root word of attain is tain, comes from the Latin, which means to touch. To actually come in touch with Krishna again. To achieve reconnection, conscious reconnection with Krishna. And arriving is a lovely word. There's a beautiful series of verses in the second canto of the Bhagavatam, spoken by Parikshit Maharaj, where he says that one who has once tasted the nectar of the devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord never relinquishes the lotus feet of the Lord, because they satisfy him like a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. So this birth, death, disease, and old age repeat business that we're all entangled in simply amounts to that, a long and troubled journey. We have absolutely no idea how long this has been going on. We've been in the material world, pursuing material desires, undergoing the repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age throughout 8,400,000 species of life, throughout countless creations, as Prabhupada says, since time immemorial. Since time immemorial. One universe lasts 311 trillion and 40 billion years. So you take that to the nth degree. How many creations and annihilations of universes have we lived through? How many bodies have we had? All of them temporary, miserable situations wherein the repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age is taking place. Now we have the opportunity to say, finish, no more. Why do we have that? Because we have somewhere else to go. We've arrived, actually. We're very close to the destination. And this is all by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He has made this situation, this achievement, this attainment, this arriving very simple. Very, very simple. We simply have to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord, and hear and chant the philosophy behind this chanting, and taste the nectar of the holy name, taste the nectar of the association of devotees. Even though we remain in this material world, and the influences of the material world are all around us, especially in this so-called modern age, it's very difficult to get away from the world as it is. Very, very difficult. But here we are with the holy name coming very close to us. The holy name is non-different from Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. So Krishna has come back into our lives, as I said earlier, because he hasn't forgotten us. Never has he forgotten us. He's been our companion as Supersoul from the moment we entered into this material world. And he wants us back. Srila Prabhupada uses the phrase very often, Krishna is very much anxious for you to come back to him. So when good fortune arises, you take it. You take it. You don't question it. You just go with it. We remain in this material world, surrounded by the influence of material desires from within and all kinds of stimulations from without. And the taste for these things is deep within us. But now we have somewhere else to go, something else to do. That, as Krishna defines in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Vishaya Vinivatante Nirahara Shidena Rasopyasya Paran Drishtva. We have the higher taste now. That verse is very specific in that it says, although the embodied living being may be restricted in sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects still remains. But this is one of the biggest pivots in your whole life. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, one remains fixed in consciousness. And as a result of that, even at the time of death, we will not be shaken. We will not be shaken. That's guaranteed. How long? Have I gone on too long? Perhaps there's some comments or questions from anyone? Otherwise, we can end here. Yes?
I just wanted to know.
Oh, there's a question from the floor here.
When did you have personal interaction with Srila Prabhupada? That's my first question. And my follow-up question was, when your spiritual master departs from this world, how does your bhakti get strengthened?
How does what?
How does your bhakti get strengthened? How to increase your bhakti after losing that support system?
Well, I don't know if everybody heard that, but the first part of the question was, did I have any personal dealings with Srila Prabhupada? And the second part of the question is, after the departure of the spiritual master from this world, how do you carry on developing your bhakti without that kind of support system? Well, I always say that in that regard, yes, I had some personal dealings with Srila Prabhupada. But every disciple of every spiritual master spends the majority of their time in separation from the spiritual master. And just because one may be in the association or the proximity of the spiritual master, it doesn't mean that you're not an idiot. And it doesn't mean that you're not stupid. Of course, it doesn't mean that you are either. But the point I'm getting at is Prabhupada gives the example of how the king might sit on a very nice silk cushion, and there also might be a cockroach next to him. So the cockroach is close to the king, but he doesn't know what he's looking at. So our fundamental association is through hearing. And through hearing, you develop a very deep and personal relationship. You too can have a deep and personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada simply by hearing him. It doesn't take too long of listening to Srila Prabhupada to know that he somehow or another, by some mystical, inconceivable arrangement, is actually speaking to you personally. It remains with you to take it or leave it. There's a very nice sentence in one purport in the 11th chapter. Actually, we've got it here. I'll just read it. When Krishna's entry into Dwarka after, well, just see, we'll just open the book right at it. Wow. It's 2 verses. Here we see Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka after he comes back from Hastinapur after the Battle of Kurukshetra. And there are 2 verses here. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, approached all of them and offered due honor and respect to each and every one of the friends, relatives, citizens, and all others who came to receive and welcome him. The Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurances, and awarding benedictions, even to the lowest in rank. It's a short purport. I'll just read this purport. To receive the Lord Sri Krishna, there were all grades of population, beginning from Vasudeva, Ugrasena, and Gargamuni, the father, grandfather, and teacher, down to the prostitutes and chandalas who are accustomed to eat dogs. And every one of them was properly greeted by the Lord in terms of rank and position. As pure living entities, all are the separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and thus no one is alien by his eternal relation. Such pure living entities are graded differently in terms of contamination of the modes of material nature, but the Lord is equally affectionate to all his parts and parcels, despite material gradation. He descends only to recall these materialistic living beings back to his kingdom, and intelligent persons take advantage of this facility offered by the personality of Godhead to all living entities. And here's the sentence. No one is rejected by the Lord from the kingdom of God, and it remains with the living being to accept this or not. So we're in a sangha now, a sat sangha. It's not guna sangha anymore, it's sat sangha. And at the core of all of that is the process of hearing. Hearing in the association of devotees, hearing from the realized soul. Srila Prabhupada is that realized soul who is the founder, Acharya of ISKCON. So everyone has access to the Acharya through hearing, and in this age especially. I mean, we're so fortunate. How many, I mean, if you take Srila Prabhupada's recorded speaking and all of the recorded speaking of all of his prominent followers, you have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of transcendental sound vibration through which you can enter deeply into relationship. Even though I have god brothers and god sisters, I'm thinking specifically of one god sister who never met Srila Prabhupada, never was in the same physical space with him. Well, she's one of the most devoted and dedicated devotees you'd ever want to meet, because she's totally attached to hearing from Srila Prabhupada, and not just hearing, but applying what she hears. And there's no separation in that. There's meeting and union in that. All right? Okay. We finished now? Yeah. Who's our Prem Sindhu? Are you the administrator?
Yes, kind of. So
we finished there?
yeah, if anybody else has any question on the call, there are about 16, 17 people on the call. If anybody like to ask any question, then
I don't think so. No questions.
I can ask one question.
Yes, sir.
So we hear all this Krishna in the spiritual world is waiting for us to come back, and despite all this, that inclination to go back is not so strong, at least for me, I can say. And so many things in this material world are still very attractive to the consciousness. So it seems like an insurmountable kind of goal to achieve. So how can you, and also sometimes, is it because there is lack of faith that this material world is still an enjoyable, it still is a horrible place and we want to go back? Or what would you say is causing us to remain complacent about our goal of achieving the spiritual?
Our attachment. We are deeply attached to the desire to control and the desire to enjoy in this material world. These two desires are called the weakness of the heart. In the last paragraph of the last purport of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada defines this. These things must be vanquished. The desire to enjoy, or the desire to control material things, up to, we see Hiranyakashipu mentioned here in the purport today, the whole universe. What to speak of my little corner of it. The desire, everybody wants to rule the world and then enjoy it, enjoy the facilities. So these two desires are very deeply embedded within our hearts. In the 13th chapter, you can read, I probably won't take up too much time today, but you can read text 22 of the 13th chapter, where the verse says, the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. Due to his association, this is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. That association, as I said before, attraction leads to association, association leads to attachment. And that has been going on for a very long time. So it's very deep. So in the second, this is a short purport, 2 paragraphs, but it's one of those purports that basically encapsulates everything that we need to know. And it describes here in the first paragraph how, well, would you mind if I read it? We've got time. It won't take long.
No, yes, please.
This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. Just see how expertly Srila Prabhupada unravels this. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, we talked about that before, ahankara, vimudatma, bewildered. So this material existence is a false manifestation which has captivated us. So as long as one is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. See Prabhupada's humor here? Saintly man, bug. This is going on. And in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances. Yet, he is under the influence of material nature. How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the 3 material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. Now that's another pivot. But he has to change that conception. And here's probably one of the most important sentences in the whole of Prabhupada's books. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna, the living entity now, the living entity, you and I. If he or she, Prabhupada uses the masculine in terms of philosophical discussion, but this applies to every living entity, no matter what our designation is. If the living entity submits to this hearing process, he will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature. And gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. Everything's based on association. So we have to shift from guna sangha into satsanga. And Sometimes we're leaning this way, and sometimes we're leaning that way. We have to practice leaning this way all the time. Practice, 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 and gradually and proportionately. I could tell a whole story here about Japanese manufactured goods. In 1965, if somebody said to you, made in Japan, you would say, rubbish, imitative, badly constructed, useless. But if somebody said to you, made in Japan in 1985, I'll take it, the best you can get anywhere. So how did they shift from that to that in 20 years? Gradual, sustainable steps of improvement. Don't worry about taking a quantum leap. If I stand you up in this corner of the room and I say, that's the material world, and that corner of the room is the spiritual world, go there. How are you going to do it? Like Star Trek, you're just going to get transported there? Well, you go there, step by step by step by step by step. So therefore, utsahan nishayat dhyayat. You must be enthusiastic, determined, and patient. The best things, they take a little bit of time to get. You can buy cut glass anywhere, but you don't get a diamond everywhere. And if you want to get a diamond, there's the process you go through. I mean, in Delhi, many diamond dealers there. You can't just walk in their shop. You have to have made an appointment. The shop is locked. You don't just walk in. So this is the most confidential knowledge that we're being given. The most confidential. Raja Vidya, Raja Guya. The most secret of all secrets is being revealed to us. So we have to be prepared to stick with it so that gradually, the influence of the mode's material nature will be removed from us. And the only way to do that is to be remain fixed in devotional activities, devotional service, beginning with Sravanam, hearing and hearing and hearing, over and over and over and over again. And gradually and proportionately, all desire for anything else will vanish from our hearts. And Krishna helps. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna, punya shravana kirtana, vidyantasto yubhadrani vidunoti surit satam. Krishna helps because he's the witness to everything. So therefore we have to maintain our sincerity and our consistency. Consistency means if I fall flat on my face, I stand up again because I want to walk. I don't want to be lying flat on my face. But because I'm a bit not used to this standing up and walking around, then there's difficulties. But I don't give up. That's consistency. So when Krishna sees sincerity and consistency, then he reciprocates to whatever degree that goes to. So practicing dependence on Krishna in all situations is essential in this regard. In the midst of all the temptations that still exist for us. Because no one can really exist, no one can really resist temptation. That's what temptation means. You can't resist it. So our ability to resist temptation again arises from acquiring a higher taste and keeping attached to that higher taste, keeping connected. Yes?
Yes.
So don't be discouraged. There's another purport. I don't want to take up too much time this morning, but in the purport to 331, there's also a very encouraging piece of information there, or a very encouraging statement by Srila Prabhupada. This verse says, those who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. And then Prabhupada, one little purport. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is eternally true, without exception. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction, without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita, but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruitive action. Now, the next couple of sentences of this purport are very applicable to us all. Again, it's a pivot. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such injunctions of the Lord, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not follow fully, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord. But because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. It was very nice to hear, and you've read Prabhupada's book so thoroughly. You can quote so many purports and.
Oh, just a few. Not. That's just a few. I don't know much else. Don't be carried away by that.
Very nice. All the purports that you read. It was very deep, very simple, but very straightforward, deep truth that Prabhupada speaks. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me on this program. I'm just passing through. You won't see me again. We may never meet again on this bumpy road to love, but we're surely on the same path, and I wish everyone all good fortune in this endeavor.
You live in Melbourne, Prabhu? Where do you live?
I live in Sydney.
Close to the temple?
Not so close. There's one temple in Sydney, another one being built. There's quite a few different sanghas. There's one preaching center in another part of the city. So I have some dealings with most of them, but I'm an independent person. I've been like that for the last 32 years, where I'm a private citizen of ISKCON.
We'll meet you if you come to Sydney sometime. We'll meet you. Are you staying here for a long time?
I'm traveling in America until the 6th of July. After tonight I go to New York, And then I'll be in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland for the next month. And then I fly back to Australia on the 6th of July. But I'm hoping to be able to come back to America next year. So if I'm able to, I'll visit you here. And hopefully spend a little time getting to know some, if not all of you. But even apart from that, don't forget, we're all just passing through. We're all on a journey. And that journey is wonderful now because of what we know. So I hope everybody's life is full of the good fortune of sadhu sangha for the rest of this life, and that by the mercy of the Lord, at the moment of death, you're able to think of Him and go back to Him. And don't worry, Krishna will help you. Krishna is helping us at every step. It's personal, and therefore be personal with the Lord and with His devotees, and everything will be okay. Even though we're in this terrible world in which all kinds of disasters and catastrophes are going to happen. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Haribol.
Bhagavat Prabhu ki jai. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah, very nice talks.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.